The rain fell steadily that October evening, drumming against the windshield of Robert Mitchell's sleek black sedan. At 62, Robert had built Mitchell Technologies from nothing into an empire worth millions. But tonight, driving away from City C Hospital, where his board meeting had just concluded, he felt every one of his years weighing on him. The city streets were nearly empty. Most people had the good sense to be home on a night like this. Robert loosened his tie, his salt and pepper hair slightly disheveled from a long day. He'd been CEO for 30 years, and lately, the executive suites felt more like a prison than an accomplishment. His daughter Sarah had stopped calling. His ex-wife had remarried. The penthouse apartment he returned to each night echoed with silence. As he slowed at a red light, a figure emerged from the shadows. A young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, with long blonde hair plastered against her face by the rain. She wore a simple beige dress completely soaked through. In her arms, she clutched a small child, maybe 3 or 4 years old, wrapped in a thin pink dress. The woman's eyes met Robert's through the rain-streaked window. There was desperation there, but also a strange dignity. She raised one trembling hand and knocked on his window. Robert's first instinct was to drive on. The light had turned green. In this neighborhood, at this hour, it could be dangerous. But something in the woman's face stopped him. Perhaps it was the way she held that child so protectively. Perhaps it was the exhaustion in her posture that spoke of a mother at the absolute end of her rope. He pressed the button, and the window descended slowly. "Please," the woman said, her voice breaking. "My daughter, Emma, she's burning with fever. The hospital is right there, but they won't see us without insurance information, and my phone died. I've been walking for hours. Please, sir. Please help us." Robert looked at the child in her arms. The little girl's face was flushed, her blonde hair damp with sweat and rain. Her eyes were closed, and she breathed in short, rapid gasps. The mother's dress was muddy at the hem, her feet bare and bleeding. In that moment, Robert saw his own daughter Sarah at that age. He remembered a night 30 years ago when she'd had pneumonia, how terrified he and his wife had been, racing to the emergency room. How precious every second had felt. "Get in," he said quietly, unlocking the doors. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." "Oh, thank you." Her name was Grace Patterson, she told him, as he drove the short distance to the hospital's emergency entrance. She was 27, a single mother who'd been laid off from her job at a diner 3 weeks ago. Little Emma had been sick for 2 days, but Grace had hoped it would pass. Tonight, when Emma's fever spiked to 104 degrees, Grace had panicked. Her landlord had disconnected her electricity for non-payment. Her car had been repossessed. She had no family in the city. She'd carried Emma 6 blocks in the rain, only to be turned away at the registration desk because she couldn't provide insurance information or proof of address on the spot. They'd told her to wait in the general waiting area, but Emma had felt so hot, so limp. Grace had panicked and run back out into the rain, hoping to flag down help. Robert listened without interrupting. He pulled up to the emergency entrance and stepped out into the rain, not caring that his expensive suit was getting soaked. He opened the back door for Grace, and she climbed out with Emma still in her arms. Inside, Robert's presence changed everything. The registration clerk recognized him immediately. His company had donated the entire pediatric wing 2 years ago. Within minutes, Emma was being examined by the head of pediatrics. Dr. Sarah Chen. Grace sat in a plastic chair, shivering, watching through the glass as doctors worked over her daughter. Robert sat beside her, quiet, steady. He'd removed his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "I don't know how to thank you," Grace whispered. "No need," Robert said. Any decent person would have done the same. But Grace shook her head. 3 other cars passed me. They all looked away. Dr. Chen emerged 20 minutes later, smiling. "Emma's going to be fine. It's a severe infection, but we've started her on antibiotics. We'll keep her overnight for observation, but I expect she'll make a full recovery." Grace's whole body sagged with relief. She covered her face with her hands and wept, her shoulders shaking. Robert sat there, this man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals, and he realized he hadn't felt this useful in years. Over the next few hours, as Emma slept in a hospital bed and Grace kept vigil beside her, Robert made some phone calls. His assistant was surprised to hear from him so late, but she knew better than to question his requests. By midnight, arrangements had been made. Grace and Emma would move into a furnished apartment owned by Mitchell Technologies, originally kept for visiting executives. Grace would have a job interview scheduled at the company's cafeteria, which was managed by a kind woman named Martha, who Robert had known for 20 years. Emma would have health insurance through the company's employee assistance program. When Robert explained all this to Grace, she shook her head in disbelief. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." Robert was quiet for a long moment, looking at Emma sleeping peacefully now, her fever broken. "I spent 30 years building a company," he said finally. "I told myself I was doing it for my family, but somewhere along the way, I forgot what that meant. I missed dance recitals, school plays, birthday parties. My daughter grew up and I barely noticed. Now she's 32 and we barely speak." He paused, his voice rough with emotion. "Tonight I saw you in that rain and I saw a mother who would do anything for her child. That kind of love. It's the only thing that really matters. Everything else, the money, the success, the corner office, it's all just noise." Grace reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were small and rough from work, so different from the manicured hands of the executives he usually dealt with. But her grip was warm and real. "It's not too late," she said softly, "to call your daughter, to tell her what you just told me." Robert felt something crack open in his chest, some wall he'd built up over decades. "I wouldn't know what to say." "Start with, 'I'm sorry,'" Grace said. "Then tell her you love her. The rest will follow." 3 months later, on a cold January morning, Robert stood in the cafeteria of Mitchell Technologies, holding a cup of coffee and watching Grace work behind the counter. She'd taken to the job beautifully, her natural warmth making her a favorite among the employees. Emma attended the company's on-site daycare, thriving now, her illness a fading memory. But the real change was in Robert himself. He'd called Sarah the morning after that rainy night. The conversation had been awkward at first, both of them fumbling for words across years of distance. But Grace had been right. Starting with "I'm sorry" had opened a door. Now Sarah visited once a week for lunch. She'd brought her 2 children, Robert's grandchildren, whom he barely knew, to the office last week. Watching them play in his corner office, he'd realized that this was what success actually looked like. He'd also started a new initiative at the hospital, a fund to help uninsured patients like Grace had been. He'd recruited other wealthy donors, leveraged his connections, and the program had already helped 50 families in just 3 months. Grace looked up and saw him watching. She smiled and waved, and Robert waved back. That night, driving home through city streets that no longer felt so lonely, Robert thought about the twist of fate that had brought Grace to his car window. He didn't believe in divine intervention exactly, but he believed that sometimes, if you were paying attention, life gave you a chance to become the person you were meant to be. He'd been given that chance on a rainy October night by a desperate mother and a sick child, and in helping them, he'd found his way back to himself. The rain had washed away more than just the dust on his windshield. It had washed away the isolation he'd built around his heart, leaving something tender and new in its place, something that felt remarkably like hope, and for the first time in longer than he could remember. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes, and sometimes the person we save ends up saving us right back. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.